Folks, if I could have everyone's attention, I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order for May 24th, 2022. I'm Kevin Jeffries, Chairman of the Commission. And before we get started, if you would join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all very much. And before we get started this morning with our minutes, I'd like to get the staff sworn in. McIntyre?
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay. And if you have a cell phone with you, please make sure it's either turned off or turned on vibrate so that it doesn't interfere with the courtroom cameras here. So with that, Commissioners, first thing we'll do, as always, is review our minutes from the April 26th meeting. I've got a couple things that I would like to get corrected here before we get to open it up for you all. On page 1, under said Chairman Kevin Jeffries called a 5-minute recess at 9:07 a.m. I just called the recess. We didn't actually vote on that, so we need to correct that. It says motion passed by unanimous vote. I don't believe we took a vote on that. Same thing on page 2 at the top, called the meeting back into session at 9:12 a.m. Motion passed by unanimous voice vote, or unanimous vote. That also needs to be corrected, because we did not delete those two. Yes, we just delete those two. So, Commissioners, are there any? Well, first thing, let's get a motion on the floor to approve the minutes. Okay, Mr. Halfling, have a second. Okay, Ms. Bonet seconds. Okay, now, is there any additions or corrections we need to make to our minutes from our April 26th meeting? Any additions or corrections other than the two that we've already made? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes as corrected signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the minutes from our April 26th meeting have been approved. All right, Mr. McIntyre, if you would, read our first two docketed items, please.
Docket PZ 22014, application has been filed by Clayton Properties, Inc. for the approval of a zoning map amendment on approximately 109.4 acres. The property is located at 5601 and 5621 South Highway 1694 Schuler Lane in Prospect. Proposed changes from AG1 Agricultural Residential District to R2 Residential. This is continued from April 26, 2022. Second docket is docket PZ 22015. Application has been filed by Clayton Properties for the approval of a preliminary subdivision plan for 187 lots and approximately 109.4 acres to be known as Sanctuary Falls Phase 2. The property is located at 5601 and 5621 South Highway 694 Schuler Lane in Prospect. The proposed zoning is R2 Residential District, also continued from April 26, 2022.
Thank you. And just to make everyone aware, so it is in the record that these two dockets were continued from our last meeting from last month. So with that, Ms. Alvey, if you would introduce the docket, please. Top both dockets.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Amy Alvey with Oldham County Planning and Development Services. As Mr. McIntyre stated, this is an application for a zoning change and a major subdivision approval. The property is located at 5601, 5621 Highway 1694 Schuler Lane. The property is currently zoned AG1 agricultural and is approximately 109.4 acres. You'll see an aerial view here. Outlined in red is the subject tract. This is just a zoomed in version. Sanctuary Falls Phase 1 is to your north. This is a zoning map that just shows the existing zoning is AG1. To the west is PUD. This is Norton Commons. And again, to the north, R2 is Sanctuary Falls Phase 1. And then to the northeast and east is AG1. The Oldham County Future Land Use Map predicts that the intended use of this property would be for single-family residential. Site history: on December 19th, 2019, Oldham County Planning Commission recommended approval of a zoning change from AG1 agricultural to R2 residential to Oldham County Fiscal Court. Fiscal Court approved that zoning change on February 18th of 2020. On December 19th of 2019, the Planning Commission also approved a preliminary subdivision plan for 58 lots on approximately 34 acres. This is the case history. This originally started back in July of 21 with the neighborhood meeting, and then followed through with technical review committee. And then we had the deferrals from, excuse me, the Planning Commission. And this just shows the postings of the signs, neighborhood meeting, or I'm sorry, adjoining property owner notices, as well as the most recent ones were the APO notices that were mailed on May 5th, as well as the public notice of in the Oldham era. Again, the applicant is proposing a zoning change, a zoning map amendment, and preliminary subdivision plan comprised of 187 lots on approximately 109.4 acres to be known as Sanctuary Falls Phase 2. And again, you'll see outlined in red, that is the subject area of the zoning change. This is just a zoomed in version of this proposed subdivision plan and shows the connectivity into Phase 1. Under notes, R2 allows a maximum density of 3.63 dwelling units per acre with a minimum lot size of 12,000 square feet and a minimum lot width of 80 feet. Open space is not required in the R2 zoning. The proposed density is 1.71 dwelling units per acre and meets the minimum lot width and minimum lot size requirements. The plan also reflects 24.7 acres of open space. So you'll see again highlighted here in green, that is all the open space in the development. The plan also outlines a signature entrance similar to Phase 1, an 8-foot mixed-use path along Schuler Lane, as well as a 50-foot landscape buffer along Schuler Lane. So this is Schuler Lane here to your east and the north. The highlighted in green is the 50-foot landscape buffer, and then in pink or purple is the 8-foot mixed use path. They do have a temporary construction entrance here that will also be their signature entrance, similar to what you had seen in Phase 1. A traffic impact study was prepared by Diane Zimmerman, Traffic Engineer LLC, and evaluated the intersections of Kentucky 1694 at Schuler Lane, and the volumes meet the warrants for a left turn lane on Kentucky 1694. The capacity analysis demonstrates a single exit lane provides desirable level of service B for Schuler Lane. The conclusion stated, quote, based upon the volume of traffic generated by the development and the amount of traffic forecasted for the year 2027, there will be an impact to the existing highway network. The only improvement to the highway network will be the installation of a left turn lane on Kentucky 1694. So in your packets, they also provided the Kentucky 1694 and Schuler Lane roadway improvement and drainage improvements plan. Outlines a left turn lane from Kentucky 1694 at Schuler Lane. No turn lanes are proposed on Schuler Lane at 1694. So this is the roadway plan that you'll see. There is the left turn lane here at the bottom left corner that shows a left turn lane. And then there is the proposed double yellow solid line here. The prior binding element for Phase 1 requiring two $125,000 bonds for future traffic control devices at Highway 1694 in Worthington Lane and Highway 1694 at Stone School Road have been received by KYTC, and courtesy copies were provided to staff. So these are just copies of of the two bonds that were posted as required from the previous approval. This is the intersection of Highway 1694 and Schuler Lane. This is traveling north on Schuler Lane. This is looking into the site. This is just to give you a bearing here. This is the first curve at Schuler Lane. This is Sanctuary Falls Phase 1. You'll see it's already under construction, and this is the beginning of the signature entrance. This is the east adjoining property, so this is across the street. This is traveling south down Schuler Lane towards Highway 1694. Again, this is your subject site here. Then this is traveling the access road that runs along the subject property and Norton Commons property and the church. So this just kind of gives you a view going down that lane. These are homes in Norton Commons. Binding elements, these are the same binding elements with the exception of the removal of the requirements for the bonds and the roadway improvement plan, which was provided previously. So binding element 1 says approval applies only to the plan presented at the May 24th, 2022 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. No lot shall have backyards facing Schuler Lane. The applicant shall submit a landscape plan for approval by planning staff. Prior to recording of the record plat, a 4-board black horse fence shall be built and maintained along Schuler Lane. Before any permit is requested, the developer shall work with Louisville Metro Emergency Service and Oldham County Emergency Management to prevent any issues regarding emergency services dispatch and response, including CAD. There shall be no exterior construction activity on projects or deliveries to sites between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. on weekdays and 4 p.m. and 9 a.m. on weekends. There shall be no trash or construction debris removal between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. I'm not going to read all of the lighting, but this is the exact same lighting standards that were from phase 1. Number 9, there should be no subdivision of any lots into greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. The cumulative phasing plan shall limit the number of dwelling units to 35 per year, beginning with the first record plat. The preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinance and requirements at the time of construction plan approval. No utility or streetlight poles shall be along Schuler Lane except for the length of Schuler Lane from Highway 1694 just past St. Mary's School. And when phase 1 went to fiscal court, this additional binding element, which is number 13, was added. So we have included that in this one as well. It says no construction vehicles for delivery shall use Moser Farm Road, Laurel Lane, Worthington Lane, or Hounds Lane to access this development. Per the applicant's justification statement, it states that this development expands on the diversity of housing opportunities without changing the uniqueness of Oldham County, is adjacent to other residential developments with interconnectivity, and is consistent with the future land use map with the forecasted use of the property as single-family subdivision. And the applicant has filed a much more detailed justification statement, which was provided in your packet. So in summary, the applicant is requesting of approval of a zoning map amendment on approximately 109.4 acres from AG1 agricultural to R2 residential. This would be a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court. If you so choose to move forward with that, then they are also requesting approval of a preliminary subdivision plan for 187 lots on approximately 109.4 acres to be known as Sanctuary Falls Phase 2. That is all that I have.
All righty. Thank you, Ms. Alley. Mr. Michael Williams, I'll call you forward, and I think we need to get you sworn in. The Oldham County School System. McIntyre?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Just name and address for the record, sir.
Michael Williams, Director of People Personnel, Oldham County Board of Education, 6165 West Highway 146, Crestwood, Kentucky.
Thank you, sir.
As Amy said, basically, based on our process, that they would be granted 35 units per year. The serving schools would be Goshen Elementary School, North Oldham Middle School, and North Oldham High School. Their standing capacity at this point would be 87.75, but when you add in all of the other subdivisions that are building and that are approved in that zone, it pushes it up to 91.53, which is still well under the threshold for the 35. And happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you. And Mr. Silliman, County Engineer.
Good morning. Jim Silliman, County Engineer, 100 West Jefferson Street, LaGrange. Some comments from our TRC, the Technical Review Committee, do still apply. Below are some of those I'll summarize. The applicant shall maintain or obtain, appropriate permits, including but not limited to the Oldham County Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Permit. Kentucky Division of Water KYR 10 permit, and Army Corps of Engineering Division of Water 401 and 404 as applicable because there are nearby jurisdictional wetlands and or waters. With regard to stormwater design, as usual for a project of this nature, stormwater detention and construction plans shall be designed in accordance with Oldham County post-construction runoff ordinance. I did observe a few. You activate this overhead.
You turn the overhead up.
Thank you. During construction plan submittal, we want to look at this stormwater connection. It's behind, we'll say it's behind lot 39 and 40, where the stormwater flow from these two pipes creates some acute angles and surface flow. I'm not sure that it's going to stay in the ditch, so we recommend or would like to see that piped with catch basins just to eliminate erosion on the adjoining properties. With regard to other plan review, the plans shall be designed in accordance with AASHTO, the policy on geometric highway designs of highways and streets, and they can utilize the supplemental low volume roads design guidelines as we've discussed with engineers in the past, and also the Oldham County subdivision regulations. We did receive the updated traffic study for phase 2 of the development, which was revised on April 5th, 2022, subsequent to comments from my office, and also 3 supplemental memos, 2 of which addressed some specifics on 2 intersections. We understand that these, many of the intersections that are addressed, or really all the intersections that are addressed in the traffic study, are outside Oldham County. They're either under the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet or Metro Louisville government jurisdiction. So I contacted both agencies to ensure concurrence from their review. We did receive the permit from KYTC regarding the left turn lane that Amy detailed in her report, and also concurrence from Metro government, their concurrence on the improvements as planned and shown in this development plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. With that, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this point? Any questions for the staff? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into presentation by the applicant or representatives and others in support of the application. Mr. Talbot, I assume that's you. You have 50 minutes as always. And if you would, we'd like to get everyone sworn in that might be testifying on your behalf. Or
Okay.
Get that. Okay. Swear that in, Mr. McIntyre.
Do you solemnly swear to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
It's for the record, Mr. Talbot.
John Talbot, good morning. Barton Warper Talbot and Roberts. My address is 1000 North Hurstbourne Parkway, Louisville, Kentucky, 4020223. I'm here for Elite Homes today. We are here on their rezoning and the subdivision plan for the piece of property on Schuler Lane, comprised of 109 acres. And it's a zone change from AG1 into R2. The R2 is a zoning classification so to preserve and protect the character of low-density residential. We think that's entirely appropriate with what your all's future land use map calls for. It was recognized in 2014. We have, you can see at the top of this slide, we talk about some of the history that Ms. Alvey went through in some detail. A couple of things I wanted to mention about that. We had our first neighborhood meeting in July of last year, and our plan changed very, very slightly, and we'll show you some of the details about that. As a result of those small changes, however, we wanted to do a second neighborhood meeting, so we were scheduled to come before you all in March, and we delayed that because we wanted to have another neighborhood meeting to make sure that everybody was fully aware of the changes and that everything was completely transparent. We were then scheduled to be before you all in April last month, and an objection was raised because our traffic engineer was not available to be cross-examined, and we agreed to delay the hearing again because we wanted her to be there, and we think that was a legitimate objection, and we're happy to have Ms. Zimmerman with us today. But the bottom line is we wanted to make sure everything is transparent, out in the open, and all of your questions are answered. Short little note about the developer. Elite Homes. They are an upstanding developer with impeccable reputation. I think as you'll see, as we talk about phase one, some of the commitments we made then and some of the commitments we're making now, that they are fully committed to making this not worse, but making this much better in the future and complying with your all's future land use map. This is our zoning map. This is a little bit more expanded view than what Ms. Alvey showed you. In the middle, bordered in red, is our site. That's the 109 acres that's currently zoned AG1. Above it to the north is the R2. That was phase one of Sanctuary Falls that we had approved in December of 2019. What this map also shows is this area has a wide variety of zoning in the area. You do have some AG1 and some CO1, but in addition to that, you have R2A, you have R2, and you also have PUD, which is immediately to our southwest. The PUD, as you all well know, that's a unique type of zoning classification, but that allows for increased density for residential. It also allows for increased intensity. So you can have commercial type developments, institutional type developments, much more intense than the R2 low density residential development that we are proposing. So we think this is very appropriate for that area. This shows the aerial with the phase one superimposed. And again, you can see our site bordered in red. At the top, you can see both the Jefferson County and the Oldham County section. There I now have circled the Oldham County section. The types of homes in phase one are going to be identical to the types of homes effectively that are in phase two. That lot on phase one had 58 lots on 34 acres. Well below the density that was allowed in R2. And the same thing in this development, as you'll see in phase two with 109 acres, we'll only have 187 lots, again, well below the density that you're allowed in R2. One of the biggest points I wanted to make about this development is that you all had some changes to your future land use map or your comprehensive plan in 2014. In that, this land was identified specifically as being appropriate for residential on less than 1 acre lots. And it was generally without any conditions, any additional conditions at all. Again, identified as a type of property that you all should rezone generally without any additional conditions. So keep that in mind as we go through this. This is the actual map from the future land use map. You can see that the property has been identified in blue. Again, that is for single family future subdivisions identified in 2014. This is table 1.12, again, taken directly from that comprehensive plan update. It's a little bit hard to see the blue, the map color, but trust me, it is the same color. What you'll see in the big red bold arrow in the middle, this is noted as general appropriateness level. And again, what that says, and this is a quote directly from the comprehensive plan update, you can see highlighted, proposed land uses that are assigned the general appropriateness level are generally allowed without any additional requirements or conditions. And again, we think that's very important as we go through this today. As you all may recall, some of you all were here in 2019, Elite went well beyond their duties and obligations and providing all sorts of improvements that we'll detail, and they're continuing with that today, well beyond what should be required. Now, why did your future land use map identify this property as being appropriate for residential on less than 1 acre lots? Well, these are some quotes and some notes from the future land use or the comprehensive plan update. Oldham County is in the top 5 counties of population growth from 2000 to 2010. Oldham County's percentage of owner-occupied housing is 85.6, among the top 5 counties in the state, an average of 69.9. Another quote, the third item I have, Oldham County is projected to continue to experience steady growth through the year 2050, with the county population projected to surpass 100,000 between 2035 and 2040. Fourth, the projected growth is a reflection of Oldham County's standing as a bedroom community for Louisville Metro with a flourishing school system. And last but not least, the areas most likely to experience the continued growth will likely be Crestwood and the Brownsboro community. And I have that underlined because this is in the Brownsboro community specifically identified for that increased growth. This is a slide, this figure 2.2, again, from the comprehensive plan update. I won't go through all those figures, but as you can see, it shows a very steady and ongoing increase in population from the present all the way through 2050, where you exceed 115,000 residents in Oldham County. Again, the future land use map and the comprehensive plan update specifically recognize that this area is appropriate for residential growth and that it's needed to accommodate the population growth that Charles County is seeing. This is an aerial with our current subdivision plan. I'm going to go through the next few slides relatively quickly. You'll see some comparison to the current plan and the small change from the one that we showed to the neighbors in July of last year. It shows our new plan superimposed next to phase 1. This is the plan that we showed in July 2021. And what I want to point out as I flip to the next one, you probably can't recognize the changes because they're very subtle. In a second, I'm going to go through and I'll show you exactly what was changed between those two. This shows the two development plans side by side. Again, it's very difficult to note any changes, but again, we wanted to have the second neighborhood meeting to make sure the residents were well aware of what those changes were. And here is our current development plan. I'm going to start to the top right. You can see an open space was relocated. There was a very small sliver of open space between the backs of those homes that's been relocated. Moving down to the bottom right, we've got a slightly revised lot configuration with our cul-de-sacs. Also, you can see moving counterclockwise, actually clockwise, we've got a revised roadway system. And then moving back to the top left, you can see a grass median was provided. That was absent, that was not part of the plan that was showed in July 2001. Now, the little box to the left, you can see really the biggest points. The lot count in the prior plan was 190. With the changes to our road network and so forth and the open space configuration, we dropped down to 187. So we lost 3 lots. The open space remained effectively the same. It went from 25.3 to 24.7. A couple things I'd also like to point out about this plan. On the right, you can see the enhanced landscape buffer and the 50-foot buffer that is along Schuler Lane. You can also see this is the area that will have the 8-foot multi-use path. That was part of what we did in phase 1, and we'll continue that all the way down Schuler Lane to connect all the way to 1694. The last thing you'll notice to the bottom right, you'll see a little green square. That's about 2.5 acres of land that we have dedicated and agreed to provide to St. Mary's for them to use as a play field for their school. And that's been a gift from Elite Homes to the school for that purpose. You can also see some of the drainage. We'll have land design and development available to answer any specific questions you all may have about that. This shows some comparisons between the R2 permitted and our phase 2 plan. Just out of curiosity, is your old screen as hard to see as mine is on this screen? Are the colors that vague or are they better? Okay, you all can see that? Okay, good. On the column to the left, that shows the R2, what is permitted. You can see the density is 3.6. On the number of acres we have, conceivably, you could have up to 395 lots, square foot 12,000, no open space requirements, and no house design standard requirements. The middle column, these are just the notes from phase 1, and you'll see as we go from phase 1 to phase 2, we keep a lot of the same things and benefits from phase 1 and roll those over into phase 2. Our density is only 1.7 in phase 1, and you can see in phase 2, we continue that. Our density is effectively 1.7. The number of lots, obviously, there's more acres in this plan, so we go from 58 in phase 1 to 187 lots in phase 2. Generally, the size of our lots are roughly the same, although we get a little bit larger. Our lots in this development range from 12,000 square feet up above to more than half an acre, 27,845 square feet. We continue having a significant amount of open space that's not required. Again, in phase 1, we had 9.1. In phase 2, we'll have another 24.7. Lastly, the housing design standards. Again, we'll have some elevations, and Mr. Pusateri will come up and talk to you about that in detail. One of the things I wanted to raise, because I think it's an important point, under AG1, you're allowed to have residential homes. They just have to be an acre lot, and they don't have to be on sewers. With the property that we have, by right, you could put 109 acres on this property conceivably. Obviously, when you actually plan, maybe it would be slightly less, but conceivably, you could have 109 lots. With our plan, we're only asking for 187. So really not a significant increase, particularly when you consider the conditions and the things that Elite Homes has been contributing to the road network and the conditions that they're doing on this plan, all to satisfy the needed home, the needed homes that are in Oldham County. This shows our signature entrance. Amy mentioned our entrance. The top one is phase 1. That's currently being built. And phase 2 will be effectively a mirror image of what you have in phase 1. So you'll have 2 bookends. It'll be a very coordinated development and very nice when you drive up Schuler Lane to look at the entrance. I also wanted to talk about some of our commitments for Schuler Lane improvements. And if I could back up, if you remember phase 1, as Ms. Albee mentioned, we agreed to a lot of commitments in phase 1 that we continue to agree to in phase 2. For instance, we agreed to widen Schuler Lane, I think to 22 feet, which was beyond what we needed to do, and we worked with the county in doing so. We agreed to the 8-foot multi-use path, the enhanced landscaping, the 4-board horse fence. We also agreed to 2 bonds for traffic lights that are in intersections in Jefferson County to assist the traffic issues that are in this area. One of the things that we did is we also agreed at the phase 1 hearing to put a left turn lane in from Schuler Lane onto 1694. And if you look in these plans, if you wrote any notes, there's lots of notes about left turn lanes. So let me give you a little background to make sure we're not getting confused. The left turn lane that Amy spoke about today and that we are doing is the left turn lane from 1694 into Schuler Lane. So that is still on the plan and we're still doing it. And that is necessary because of the traffic counts and so forth. What we had also agreed to do, and with all the things that we agreed to do in phase 1, I think you can agree we were in a very agreeable mood and they agreed to do just about everything. They had a couple people, residents, not many, but a couple asked if we could put a left turn lane in from Schuler Lane out onto 1694. You'll see, and I'll go through some of the traffic studies, but the counts did not support it. Safety did not support it. It was simply thrown out there as a request. All it was going to expected to require from us was some painting stripes on the road. Okay, that was all it was. So it was a very easy thing for us to agree to. Now that we've come forward with review by KYTC and Jefferson County, who both have jurisdiction over this intersection, they've asked for some changes that have made that more difficult that I'll elaborate on. This is the current condition of Schuler Lane. You can see Schuler Lane is to the left. 1694, you're looking north, that's to the right. And here was the plan that we presented in 2019 to you all. You can see you've got to the top, you've got a lane driving into Schuler Lane, and then out, you've got a right and left turn lane coming out of Schuler Lane. That was our plan and what we wanted to do. This is the traffic study, and there's 2 parts. The top part shows the traffic study that we showed you and was part of the file in 2001. I'm going to talk about that first because those were the conditions when we agreed to that left turn lane in 2019. You can see it shows the level of service in the morning on the left, the 3 on the left, and then the 3 to the right shows the level of service in the afternoon. They were A's and B's all the way through. There was not any need for left turn lane in 2019, even though we agreed to do it. And you can see on the morning, the 2024 with the build, it's 10.3 seconds away. That's a B level of service. With the build, it only goes to 10 seconds, 10.5 seconds. So without the build, 10.3, with the build, 10.5. Virtually an insignificant difference in the morning from the build to no build. In the afternoon, the level of service does drop from an A to a B, but you can see the time drops very slightly. Hopefully y'all can see what I'm looking at. Let me see if I can do this. Right here, it was 9.8 with no build in 2024, and with the build, it was only 10.3. So even though it dropped to level of service, it only went up by 1/2 of a second wait. So virtually insignificant. There was never any need to have that from a traffic standpoint, and there still is not. Now, the second part below, that shows the traffic study that was done by Diane Zimmerman in this year, January 2022. This shows the 2020 no build. The wait is 11.6 seconds. With the build, it only went up to 13.7. So still virtually an insignificant difference in wait from build to no build. In the afternoon, it went from 10.1 to less than a second wait, increased to 10.9. So the point is, there was never any need in 2019 to do it from a traffic standpoint, and there continues to be no need to do it now. This is an email that we received recently from Beth Stuber. She's with Transportation and Engineering Supervisor in Jefferson County. Again, recall the Jefferson County and KYTC have jurisdiction over this intersection. And in the highlighted bottom portion, she points out that this morning, Jefferson County met with KYTC, and the state also doesn't see the need for left turn lane from the southbound Schuler lane to eastbound Kentucky Highway 1694. So I think we've hopefully covered our basis that is not necessary. Now, why are we talking about all of this? This shows our current plan. Again, I mentioned we had some issues with KYTC. What they have asked us to do, you can see a little bit of a median on Schuler Lane, and that is the crosshatched yellow painted stripe to provide an additional turning radius. That was on Amy Alvey's presentation. You can also see it here. What you also see is the left turn lane from 1694 onto Schuler Lane. Again, to reemphasize, we are continuing to do that and will provide that left turn lane. The problem that additional turning radius caused, however, that KYTC asked us to do for the safety of buses coming from the north and taking a right onto Schuler Lane, they thought they needed extra turning radius. That pushed our left and right turn lane further to the south. There's not enough right-of-way to do that once you add that additional turning radius. We did look into some ways to do that. We contacted St. Mary's. They were agreeable to providing the right-of-way, and that was where we talked about providing them the ball field, the extra 2.5 acres that I showed you on the plan. The exchange for that was going to be they get 2.5 acres for a ball field. We got effectively 1/10 of an acre to have the additional right-of-way to get both of those lanes in. So we wanted to do it, and in good faith, we have done everything we can to try to do it. Unfortunately, the Norton Commons has a homeowners association. They have, it's my understanding, they have not given us the authority to have that additional right-of-way, and they hold ultimate control. It's for reasons unbeknownst to us, but they have not given us that additional right-of-way. Additionally, KYTC and Jefferson County have indicated they don't want the left turn lane. So we've got really two things running against us on that. But again, hopefully you understand and see that it is not necessary. Here is our current plan. You can see the, hopefully it shows up a little better than the screen that I'm looking at. You can see the crosshatched area. Again, that is because you can see it's kind of a sharp turn. When you take a right turn for the buses coming down, that's where we're providing that additional radius. And so that's what we're doing, and that's our current plan. The slide shows that it's been approved both by Jefferson County and KYTC, and I believe that also was confirmed by Mr. Silliman. But we have received approval for the current plan as it is today that I've shown. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the traffic lights. Again, this is for two intersections that are in Jefferson County, not Oldham County. And we mentioned the two bonds, the bonds for traffic lights, and they were $125,000 each. So a total of $250,000 that Elite Homes agreed to do for bonds for traffic lights at Stone School Road and the Worthington Road intersection at 1694. This shows the traffic study information on this. A couple things I want to point out. The first of which is the only movement that is problematic is the Worthington Lane westbound. This is coming out of Glen Oak subdivision. Currently in 2027, without the build, it's already a D at 33.6 seconds. So it's not good without anything that we have done. With our build, it does go up to 50 seconds. So it does increase in the AM. With the traffic light, however, again, with the bonding that we provided in phase one, that level of service improves not only over what it would be after build, but over what it is currently if we don't build one single house on this property. It drops to a B at 14.5 seconds. Similar type situation in the afternoon. It's currently without the build, it's a C at 18.5 seconds. And after the build, it rises slightly to 22 seconds, remains a C. With the traffic light, however, has been bonded. It drops to 19.4 section, level of service improves to a B. The other thing I would just point out, you can see again, no build, all of the intersections are different. You got C's, D's, you do have these two that are A's and not really problematic, B's and C's. But if you compare that to the level of service with the traffic light, all either remain the same or improve on level of service. And I believe all actually improve in terms of your seconds on your period of wait. This is the second intersection that I mentioned at Stone School Road. Very similar situation. The only problematic movement is Stone School Road westbound. That is currently an F, so it's in bad condition already. The wait is 198 seconds in the morning. With the build, it's still bad, still an F at 295 seconds. With the traffic light, however, that has been bonded, it improves significantly from what the no build situation is to 26.3 seconds level of service C. You can see a similar fashion in the PM. Without the build, it's an E at 40.8 seconds. With the build, it's 57 seconds to an F. So slight worsening with the build, but with the traffic light, it improves significantly to 20.3 seconds. And again, if you look at all of the conditions level service with the traffic light, both the afternoon and the morning, you can see they all improve over the current no build situation. Another reason we think this development is appropriate for Oldham County is that it's going to contribute significant tax money to your county. You can see on Sanctuary Falls, we've got our average sales price to date, and these are sale prices from phase one that we currently have, $686,000. Believe it or not, that number has actually gone up since we put those figures in, and I would anticipate by the time we start coming out of the ground with phase two, that price would probably be higher, but we try to be conservative. The total value created would be $128 million on those 187 lots. And that would contribute $1.658 million. You can see at the bottom in total taxes. A few things all of them are important, but a few I wanted to point out and I've highlighted. The school will get directly $738,000 and change. The school building fund will get another $287,000. And the fire department will get $205,000. Significant amount of money that this development will be contributing to your Earls County. And one thing I didn't highlight is directly to the county up top is $111,000. These will all be yearly benefits. This is not a one-time benefit. These are going to be monies that are paid into your county on a yearly basis. Here I had some binding elements, and Amy really did a detailed job going through them. So I'm going to be very brief, but no rear yards. The floorboard horse fence will be done. No additional utility or street lights. We'll have the 8-foot multi-use path. Significant lighting conditions. These were very important to the people in Hidden Creek when we came to phase one. I don't believe there's going to be anybody in opposition on those lights. That was something we agreed to do and we continue to do to this day. All the home lots will be on MSD sewers, contributing to your community facilities and services. That's important in your comprehensive plan. And again, we won't have any construction activity. We won't have any trash construction at hours that would be a problem for the neighbors. And lastly, we are going to continue to work with Louisville Metro Emergency Services and Oldham County to make sure there's not any issues with emergency services. At this point, we've got our slides that are going to show our home renderings, and I'd like to introduce Joe Pusateri. He's the founder of Elite Homes, to come take you through and talk about some of the homes. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah, my name is Joe Pusateri. I live at 18401 Bridgemore Lane, Louisville, Kentucky, 40245. Before I go over the elevations, I just want to tell you a little bit more about our company. This is our 46th year in business. Very first house I built was in Barwick Farms on Pin Oak Drive. Next home I built was on Winters Lane. Our company is probably best known for the home we built for the Extreme Makeover Home Edition TV show in 2008 for a young man that was blind in a wheelchair. It's in the U of L marching band. His father pushed him in formation. His name was Patrick Henry Hughes. And it was big news in Louisville in 2008. We have built almost 300 homes in Oldham County, and I jotted down some of the subdivisions that we've built in. Among them are Briar Hill, Chapel View, Abbott Grove, Ballard Woods, Cardinal Harbor, Glen Oaks, Hillcrest, Heather Green, Edgewood Manor, Kentucky Acres, Longwood, Maverick Estates, Paramount, Pond Creek, Northwood, Hunting Creek, Old Taylor Place, Redbud Farms, River Bluff, Spring Hill, Settlers Point, Shallow Farms, Barwick Farms, Grandel, Rivers Landing, the Reserve at L'Esprit, Rollington Acres. We're also developing a subdivision called Royal Oaks in Crestwood. We're developing the last section of the Reserve at L'Esprit. And we have the 58 lots that we have in Sanctuary Falls in Oldham County as well. Here are some of the houses, some of the front elevations of the houses that we would build. If you look at them, you'll see that they all are predominantly brick and stone with some siding accents. They all will have full basements. They will all have a minimum of 2-car garages. The garages will all be side entry. In homes like this, when you're in the $700,000 price range, the roofs tend to be steeper. So a lot of what you see from the street is the roof. So we have upgraded dimensional shingles as standard on all of the homes. Because we're the builder of all of the houses, we have a master landscape plan for all of the homes. We don't allow a customer to do their own landscaping. We have a professional company so that the homes flow together. We will plant a street tree approximately every 50 feet. So 10 years from now, as you drive through the subdivision, it's like a boulevard. It provides a lot of shade, very good feeling as you drive through. And then, of course, you have all the health benefits of planting all those trees as well. We have a design center in our office. So anybody that buys a home from us has to go through the design center, and we control the colors that they're allowed to select, so that people cannot select a color or color scheme that maybe that they like, but probably the majority of the neighbors would not like. And then we will sod 100% of every lot. That's kind of unusual on lots. So it might be a quarter or a half acre to go to that expense to sod the lots, especially the rear yards. But if you seed and straw, a yard, it probably takes 10 years of treating it and fertilizing it and staying on it till it ever gets as good as it would be on the very first day that you sod it. So 100% of the lots will be sodded. Just make sure that the other thing that I failed, this is my cheat sheet here, is that all the building materials will go all the way to the ground. So the brick or stone is planned, and the way we put the foundations in so that it goes right to the ground and you never see any concrete foundation sticking up out of the ground. Here are some of the other elevations of some of the houses we'll be building. You go through our office. In numerous spots in our office, we have our mission statement. It's posted on the wall. And at the very bottom of the mission statement, it says, in all of our dealings, we try to do the right thing and to treat others the way we would like to be treated. And I promise you, that is the attitude we have brought to this project. And anybody that we have dealt with, we've tried to understand what their concerns were, to do what we could to address those concerns and to make sure that this area, this project is better because Elite Homes developed it and built the houses there. And I hope that you will see that and approve what we're asking today. Thank you.
Mr. Pusateri? Yeah, but just to make sure you've got 21 minutes or whatever on your presentation time.
Well, that's good because we're at the end of our presentation. We'll reserve the rest of our time for questions. And thank you all very much for your time. As you can see, Mr. Pusateri is very passionate, and their company's put in a lot of time and effort to make this a quality project. Hopefully you all will see is deserving of your county. We think it is, and provides the necessary homes and the type of homes that you will like to have in this county to allow your community to succeed into the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, is there anyone here that would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone that would like to speak in support of? Okay, seeing. Oh, yes, sir. We'll get you sworn in here, and then we'll get your name and address for the record. McIntyre?
My name is, I'm sorry.
Get you sworn in.
Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
My name is Gene Gottfried. I live at 5501 Schuler Lane. I am directly across, I live on a small 31 acre farm. We did get our soybeans planted yesterday, by the way. We live right across the street from phase 2. And I have been there since 1989. And over the years, there have been a lot of people who have come to look to develop the sod farm, or the Fisher farm. And when they did, I always went to talk to them. The first one was Canfield Development, was going to develop a place, I think, 2007, 8, 9, sometime in that range. And it was going to be called St. James Place. And I addressed them and talked to them about what they were going to do, what our concerns were in the neighborhood. And they didn't really react very well to me. And then, of course, in 2008, the economy went under and Canfield quit that development. Then sometime in 2012, 13, 14, 15, Pulte Homes was going to develop the farm. And once again, I went and talked to them, and they really didn't respond very well to talking to them about what they were going to do. And they ended up dropping the option on the farm. They didn't develop it. A couple of years ago, Elite Homes had a planning meeting or an open forum meeting down at the church on Brownsville Road, and I attended that. And that was the first time I met Joe and Mike. And I probably didn't come off very well because I hit them pretty hard about what they were going to do. And then they had a meeting up here, and I was here, and I met Joe in the hallway. And I talked to Joe about, don't have your houses, the backyards facing Schuler Lane, because most of his developments, I think at the time, their backyards faced the road they were on. And much to my surprise, about 3 days later, I got a text or an email from Joe that said, hey, look at this. And it was, he redrew phase 1's development to changing where the backs of the houses were going to face Schuler Lane to everything was going to be front housings facing Schuler Lane. And when people listen to you and work with you, that really tells you something about a company. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I've had it all the years I lived there. By the way, I'm not going to develop my farm. I've got 3 kids. 2 years ago, we had a Easter lunch or dinner rather. And after dinner, we had a family meeting, and my 3 kids want the farm. So we're setting up right now how it's going to be. We'll go over to them. I want to talk to you about things I want to do to make sure I'm not getting in trouble. But it's been a great place. All of y'all live in Oldham County, I know. I live in Oldham County, but I'm right on the edge, so I'm kind of like an outsider. You don't know how great it is to live in Oldham County. I mean, it's just absolutely outstanding. And this development is Oldham County. It's got Oldham County schools, and you've got major everything within 3 miles of you. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable development. I mean, it's just great. One other thing I wanted to say about this is I didn't know that they were pushing for a turn lane on Schuler Lane. And I've been retired for the last 12 years. Before that, I worked in the computer industry. But I come down Schuler Lane now at all different times of day. So I'm not coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 or whatever. I might be 7 o'clock, or this morning I was 8:15 and different times of the day. And when I come down Schuler Lane, when I get to 1694, like today, I turn left to come up 329 to go up here. There was no wait whatsoever. There was no traffic. When I was driving down Schuler Lane, I did see 3 cars going east on 1694. But when I got there were no cars either going east or west, and I immediately did a left-hand turn. So I don't think the whole issue about having a turn lane there was, I don't know who brought it up, but it wasn't me or anybody else that I knew about. But I want to thank Jim and his staff. By the way, congratulations to you. It was great working with you people, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else here that would like to speak in support of this application? Yes, ma'am. We'll get you sworn in and then name and address. Mr. McIntyre?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Good morning. I'm Sue Anna Leslie. I'm the property owner back at 11612 Hidden Creek Road. That's in the Hidden Creek neighborhood that it also is adjacent to the Sanctuary Farms neighborhood Phase 1 in the Jefferson County side. I represent the Homeowners Association as the president of the Homeowners Association, and I'm also an adjacent property owner and will be speaking for my personal experience as well. So we purchased our property back in 2020 in the summer, so we were not part of the original negotiations on the binding elements. However, we quickly learned that Elite Homes had worked with the neighborhood to include our wishes, the neighborhood's wishes into those binding elements and work with the neighborhood to meet our expectations. I will say to date, they've much largely done this, and they continue to work with us on any other solutions or concerns that we may have. The list, which Ms. Alvey spoke to in the beginning, I won't reread that, but in addition to that list, there's a 30-foot vegetation buffer that Elite Homes had agreed to leave between the neighborhood, our two neighborhoods. Our personal property is on the Jefferson County side as well. And when we purchased the property, we were concerned that that vegetation buffer didn't go all the way down. And we talked to Elite Homes, Joe Pusateri, about it. And very quickly, he had arranged a different plan to leave that vegetation buffer completely across the back to help meet our expectations. And that required them moving a detention basin. So it did require a bit of effort on their part to help meet those expectations. In addition, something that's very important to our neighborhood was AT&T fiber, as we currently don't have access to that. And Elite Homes agreed to run that down to the corner of the neighborhood for us. And we're working right now with AT&T to get that all the way back into our neighborhood. And Joe and Elite Homes have been very supportive of that as well. So I would just say Elite Homes, they continue to work with us, satisfy requirements. I think I speak for most of the neighborhood when I say this. I know there's been some concerns on the traffic safety at the corner. To my knowledge, or I guess in my personal opinion on the corner, I will have to leave that to the traffic studies and the professionals as to what they recommend is the best and the safest for that area. However, in driving back and forth to our property, which we're currently building a home, I have not experienced any negative traffic issues of no traffic buildups or anything back there. My son also goes to St. Mary Academy, so I'm back there in the mornings, probably in the peak time. I will just lay out for consideration that they do normally have a traffic control person out on Schuler Lane helping to direct traffic during the carpool hours in the morning. I know that recently that person has been on medical leave, so there's not been somebody out there, but just in talking with the faculty and the parents at school, I know it is everyone's expectation that that will continue to go forward. So throwing that out there for consideration. So in conclusion, I would just say, my personal experience working with Joe Pusateri and Mark Kenton with Elite Homes has been very positive. They've been very proactive in working with Hidden Creek subdivision in reaching out to us and making sure our concerns and needs are met, and they've listened. So I just, what Joe said about trying to do the right thing, in my opinion, I feel like they are trying to do the right thing and they're taking into consideration the neighboring areas and trying to do what's best.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else would like to speak in support of? One else? Okay, seeing no one, we are going to take about a 10-minute recess here to allow the testimony and questioning from those opposing the application to get set up. And so, commissioners, and folks that are here, please don't, talk to the commissioners during our little break. But we'll take about a 10-minute recess and reconvene about 10 minutes after 10. Thank you. We're about ready. Make sure to start the clock. I'd like to call everybody back to order, if we could here this morning. And at this point, we'll move into testimony and questions by those opposing the application. Mr. Baxter, I assume you'll be starting, and you, as always, you have 50 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Barry Baxter, 117 West Main Street in LaGrange. I represent adjoining property owner Norton Commons. I have with me today Kenneth Agent, who is a professor at the University of Kentucky, I believe, and he is an engineer. And Mr. Agent, can I get you to stand up on this one?
Is he the only one that's going to be testifying?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay.
Raise your right hand, sir. Yep, well, can we get the clock stopped? He needs a couple minutes to talk to his client.
Barry, I just want to put an objection on the record. This report was just given to me by Mr. Baxter from their traffic engineer and expert. Obviously, we've been in front of you all in March, April. They asked for a delay because Diane Zimmerman was not there. And so I would ask this report being just dropped on us at the 11th hour that be stricken, not permitted into the record.
Mr. Carter is our county attorney.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Turn your mic on. John, can you? Okay. He didn't.
Oh, sorry. We were just given a traffic study from Mr. Baxter and his client. My point was, we've been here in March, April. We were asked for a delay from Mr. Baxter because our traffic engineer was not here. Just today, in fact, not even before the hearing, but just before that, just at the break, I was given a technical expert report from their traffic engineer. We had not seen this before now. We've really just had a few minutes to look at it. And so I would ask for this report to be stricken from the record and not considered today.
Mr. Carter?
We can allow them time to look at the report and respond to it. You've got a traffic engineer, right?
We do have a traffic engineer with us today.
Well, and just so you're clear, he's not talking about traffic. He's talking, Mr. Agent is present to testify about concerns, safety concerns that relate to the intersection at 1694 and Schuler Lane. So the traffic information I gave to Mr. Talbot this morning that I've included is information I want to discuss with Ms. Zimmerman, and that's why, but I provided that because we're going to go over that during the time when I talk to her.
What's your conclusion, sir? Put that.
You should be allowed to go forward.
All right. On the advice of counsel, our counsel, we will move forward. So, Mr. Baxter, and start the clock again, please.
Chairman, I don't remember if Mr. Agent was sworn or not. So, okay, Mr. Agent, if you stand up and get sworn.
Sworn.
Tom says he wasn't sworn.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
Mr. Agent, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
And Tom, Mr. Agent's going to have some things that he wants to present on the overhead. So if we could get that turned on. Mr. Agent, if you would come up here and introduce yourself. Mr. Chairman, just for the purposes of the record, I provided the commissioners and I've filed a copy of his CV along with cases that he has testified in and a copy of his report. I have the original signed report that I will file on the record when he's done testifying.
Okay. And we'll just need name and address and your credentials, sir.
My name is Ken Agent. My home address is 3265 Blenheim Way in Lexington, Kentucky.
Okay. Proceed on, sir. What,
Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm going to. My background, again, I'm a civil engineer. I graduated from the University of Kentucky in 1971. So the last 50 years, I've been working in the area of traffic and safety. The first 10 years, I worked for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet as a traffic engineer, first in a district office and then at the Division of Research in Lexington. And since 1981, I've worked at the University of Kentucky in the College of Engineering in the Transportation Center, again, in traffic and safety. Also, since you'll see that in my CV where I have a list of all that. For the last 3 years now, I'm semi-retired. I still work at the UK, still have my office like I always have there. One of the major things I do now, and I've done since it started in 2005, is and one of the reasons I was kind of involved in this particular project was something called Safety Circuit Rider, where we go and talk to make presentations to fiscal court, and a little over 60 counties we've worked with at this point in time, where we try to go to those counties and try to upgrade their roads, strap signs, make it agree with MUTCD, and also look at, line of sight issues, all sorts of issues related to the county and local roads. Also, since 1981, you'll see when the referenced testimony, I'm an accident reconstructionist, and I've testified a few hundred times, given depositions in trials related to traffic accidents. So that's my background is as a traffic engineer, particularly a traffic and safety engineer. So what I was asked to look at here, and what my report deals with, is very specific. It just deals with the intersection of Kentucky 1694 and Schuler Lane. And so what I looked at was the existing intersection, the proposed intersection, and to look at it versus recognized regulations and standards. If you look on my report, page 1 talks about the case material I've looked at. I've looked at the plans, the impact studies. I've looked at the standards and regulations both on the county level, the state level, and also the federal level. I think I've also heard that they referenced the AASHTO, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That's the national level, and they talk about guidelines and regulations. If you go from the state level, you have the Division of Highway Design Standards that deal with that, and you also have your county standards. They're all very consistent on what I'm going to be talking about today, as far as what I think could be done to make this intersection, when it's built safer. Because how did this intersection get there to start with? It's like a lot of intersections like that see across the state. If you tried to find the design plans for this existing intersection, you're not going to find any. It just kind of happens. There it is. So one of the classes I teach is a class on tort liability to a lot of the county, city, and state people who are in the transportation area. And what I tell them is, you've got issues out there on the roadway that maybe it's not most beneficial, the safest. So what you do is, under those existing conditions, you try to warn drivers of problems. But in situations like this, when you're actually changing and reconstructing, there is your chance and there is your duty to go back and make in this case, this intersection comply with county, state, and federal regulations on specific areas. So I guess the best way of kind of going through it is, I went out there a few weeks ago and I want to show you go through some photographs. So I can go up and down here. All right. All right, thanks. So if you look at figure 1, first of all, this is some Schuler Lane. What we got is, I would refer to east-west. Kentucky 1694, generally east-west. We'll call it east-west. And so figure 1, both of these figures, 1 and 2, we're at Schuler Lane, first looking to the right, people coming from eastbound. And you can see you've got a curve there. We'll talk about that later, because the curve limits the line of sight. And there's standards about where that line of sight's got to be. It's right on the borderline right now. Looking back to the left, is a view, and you see there's the line of sight's a little better, it's straight that direction, but you've got a lot of vegetation that causes problems, and it's in its orientation as it exists today. If you look at figure 3, that is Schuler Lane, and you've seen also the drawings that you have. And one of the big issue we have here, we're going to be talking about a good bit, is the profile, the orientation we have here. One of the basic standards when you start designing a intersection, this is a T intersection. We've got east and west on Kentucky 1694 and Schuler Lane on the north side of the road, is you want to have that to be a 90-degree intersection. And if you look at the current regulations here in Oldham County, they talk about no less than 75 degrees. And that's very common. If you look at state and federal regulations. What we've got right now, I looked at it and measured, I think it's right at 49 or 50 degree orientation. So that's an issue we have. That's a problem we got that we need to deal with. If you look at starting with figure 4, this is the eastbound approach at various distances to Schuler Lane. This is at 200 feet. If you look at that photograph, you can see where now it's 2 lanes. The shoulder, you look at the right there, the shoulder, paved shoulder is narrowing down to basically nothing as it exists today. And as you look at the plans have very little shoulder at that intersection also. Figure 5, and it's at 400 feet back. And the point I want to make here is you got a curve that starts a little over 500 feet back and ends about a little over 100 feet from the intersection. Vegetation on the right limits the line of sight. Line of sight this is the limit of it, about 400 feet. You're really stretching it to get 400 feet. If you look at the standards for a 45-mile speed limit road, it's 360 feet. So it's right at the borderline right now as far as line of sight issue goes. This is the only approach within 1,000 feet and at 1,600 feet. The point I want to make here is that going through Norton Commons, at the other intersections through there, all the intersections meet at 90 degrees. And also the cross section here is the standard that you have for a rural collector. This is a rural collector road. If you looked at one of the things I looked at in my review, the highway information system, if you go to the Division of Planning website, you can get various information, which shows this is a major collector road. It shows the current average daily traffic on 1694 is over 3,000. And it's certainly going to be increased dramatically when this new development starts. But for that type of roadway, the cross section that you're supposed to have is what you've got here going through Norton Commons. You have 12-foot lanes, 14-foot two-way left turn lane, which could be also marked as a left turn lane at intersections, and a 4-foot paved shoulder. It goes all the way through up to right past where the school is, and then it starts narrowing down to less than 20 feet between the edge lines. And the proposed design is that you would have 10-foot lanes or 12-foot shoulder. So you're going from 12-foot lanes down to 10-foot lanes. You're going down from a 14-foot left turn, two-way left turn lane down to 12 feet from the end of where the last intersection is to the intersection at Schuler Lane. You look at figure 9. This is just another overview looking at the curve and how the lane, the cross section of the road changes from 14 feet center left turn lane and 12-foot lanes down to Schuler Lane where it is as it is now. And as I see the plans, you're still going to have this curve. You're going to have a little bit wider road, but it doesn't meet the cross section of what's approaching it.
Please kind of keep it quiet if you would.
Look in the other direction. This is just coming from the other direction to Schuler Lane. That's at 200 feet back. And There we have 400 feet back, 600 feet coming the other direction. There is a curve sign, both directions with a 35-mile-an-hour advisory speed. So that's just kind of a background as far as trying to show the roadway and the issues that we're going to talk about here. The issues I have with it is trying to make the intersection safer. Because again, what I said before, you've got an opportunity since you're reconstructing this, if it's going to be reconstructed, to reconstruct it in a way to comply with regulations to make the road safe. And I want to just kind of go through, you've got the report, but just let me, I don't want you to have to read that whole report, but I will go through I want to just highlight the data analysis. At the end of what I've got in the report is a little bit of background. I list all the material that I reviewed, which I've talked about. It's the regulations that you need to comply with, the plans. I did look at the crash history. You can get online and if you know what you're doing, be able to look at the crash history. There is no crashes at this location at this point in time. It's very low volume road, which could change in the future. Will change in the future as the volume increases. But this 1694 is classified as a major collector. The most recent ADT, as I mentioned before, is over 3,000. It's going to increase dramatically, substantially when you open this development. If you look at the crash data, there's no crashes in the past, but again, could change with the increased traffic flow on Schuler Lane. You got this right-hand curve, which ends, according to the HIS data, about 180 feet prior to the intersection. It's a little bit less than that's what I looked at, but it's very close to the intersection. But the points, the big points I want to make, I think that we need to deal with, and if you can read that, but you got the report to look at. First of all, is the orientation. You want to have, your objective is to have intersections at 90 degrees. It's currently at about 50 degrees. Your regulations say it should be no less than 75 degrees. As I look at the plans, the new plans don't change that orientation. They leave it at as the existing orientation, which is like close to 90 degrees. Now I realize that if you look at the drawing, there's some channelization as you get close to the intersection to try to orient drivers more at a proper angle toward the intersection. But at no point is there any kind of a tangent straight section for a driver to stop in at Schuler Lane when you're intersecting with 1694. So again, it's your own regulations with the county. If you look at the state regulations, they talk about the same thing. Federal, they all talk about the same thing. In that you need to have this intersection at a different orientation. And this is your opportunity to do it. You shouldn't reconstruct a intersection and leave it with the problem that you got to start with. Because the problem you have when you have an intersection like this, and just to show you how an example of what talking about this. This is something I just made a little summary out of AASHTO. It's called, the engineers call it the Green Book Policy on Geometric Designs of Highways and Streets. They talk about the profile of at-grade intersections. And it talks about intersecting roads should meet at or nearly at right angles. If you have acute angles, which is what we've got here, you've got problems with line of sight, and you've got problems with turning movements. So specifically, you're going to have situations here where people are going to be coming westbound, like school buses. School bus is coming westbound on 1694. They have to turn right on to Schuler Lane. And they tried to address this somewhat, and it was mentioned before with the states talked about the channelization islands there. But you're instead of making a nice right turn on the Schuler Lane, you've got to swing left, encroaching in the other lane, in the eastbound lane, and then make a wide turn, go back. So you don't back to the right. You're making a wide turn. You're forcing them into a turning radius, which it's not designed to have. So that's a big problem that you have. A major problem that you have when you have these acute angle intersections, which again you have the opportunity to alleviate in the design. second bullet here talks about if the proper design was used to increase the angle, it's going to result in, and one other thing it's going to do is if you go coming down Schuler Lane to its left, to move the intersection that direction to the east, there's no train problem. There's certainly area to move the intersection that direction. And when you do that, you're moving the intersection a little bit further away from the curve. And when you do that, you're also increasing the side distance, because the AASHTO and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet standards say you have to have a minimum line of sight of 360 feet at 45 miles per hour. The current line of sight, again, when I was out there, is right at 400. We're stretching it to be 400. You can make it better. You can improve it if you move the intersection to make it a right angle or close to a right angle. You'll move it further east. You'll increase that line of sight. The other, and I don't think there should be any debate about that. I think anybody in the engineering field would agree. It's well known that you want to have your intersections at right angles. The other point I want to make about the cross section is that for whatever reason, they're changing the cross section. On the approach all the way through Norton Commons, it's 12-foot lanes, 14-foot two-way left turn lane, and 4-foot paved shoulders, which is the standard for a major collector. But they're narrowing it to 10-foot lanes, 12-foot left turn lane, and if you look at the plans, the shoulder goes up about basically hardly anything at the intersection. Again, to me, I do not understand why you would not continue that cross section. You always major intersections in Norton's Commons. Why don't you just go ahead and extend that cross section past Schuler Lane? By doing that, it requires a little bit of extra room, obviously, but if you look at the photographs, there's plenty of turf, level turf right to the south side of 1694 to allow for that. When you do that, you are, and one other benefit you're getting out of it is you are decreasing that curve radius, and you're also increasing the line of sight there also. So it also improves that benefit. So by changing the angle to closer to 9 degrees, by changing the cross section to match up with the cross section as you go into it, you also have an extra benefit of increasing the line of sight between drivers exiting Schuler Lane and 1694. We'll also mention that when you're doing this, when I was out there, I noticed there's an issue about the grade. There's a slight upgrade. Schuler Lane is kind of a hill crest, so you really don't see people coming the other direction. So you need to make sure that when the final result is out, the intersection is done, if it's done, that it provides the opportunity to improve this grade so that you can view drivers coming the other way. That's another issue that I see from a safety standpoint. There was a lot of talk about the left turn lane on Schuler Lane. There was a need for it or not a need for it. Obviously, I don't think there's any debate that you're going to increase the volume coming out of Schuler Lane. You're going to increase the left turn volume. And I'm not looking at the counts. I didn't do a trip generation model count. I didn't look at that. I was looking at safety. And from a safety standpoint, this also provides the opportunity to put a left turn lane. And I think looking at just from the safety standpoint, in my opinion, that you need to have a left turn lane on Schuler Lane. So basically my conclusions are, again, the reconstruction of that intersection results in the duty to improve its design. That's the duty you have. And to do that, these are the things I think that need to be done. The orientation should not be left like it is, where we got an acute angle intersection. It needs to be close to 9 degrees. I think it would allow to be 9 degrees, or at least not less than 75 degrees. The cross section on the approach should be continued on through Schuler Lane. You got to make sure that the grade allows drivers on each direction to be able to have a good line of sight. And I think you need to provide a left turn lane on Schuler Lane. These are all, again, I don't think very controversial opinions. Anybody that's in traffic and safety. It's well known that you need to have your intersections at right angles, and we have the opportunity to do it. I don't, and certainly the guidelines, the regulations for the appropriate width for a collector road. If you look at the guidelines, they say 12-foot lanes, 14-foot shoulders, 4 foot and 4 foot 12-foot left turn lane, 4-foot shoulders, which is what was done in Norton Commons. Norton Commons, as it approaches, was done to meet the standards. That is 9-degree intersections, proper cross section. That same requirement should extend past Schuler Lane.
Mr. Agent, the opinions you've given here today are based upon your training and experience as an engineer,
That's correct.
and they are given within a degree of engineering probability.
Yes, sir.
And sir, this is a copy of the report, and I've already tendered an unsigned copy, but you signed it somewhere in here. You've got
Page
your
5.
signature. Page 5, he says. So 4, 5, right there on the bottom, that's your signature, correct?
It is.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could tender the signed copy. Give it. Mr. Agent, you can have a seat.
Okay.
And we're going to move on. Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like to ask Ms. Zimmerman a few questions. I appreciate her being here today. Could I get her to come forward?
Zimmerman, just to make sure you were sworn in, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just name and address for the record, please.
And Zimmerman, 12803 High Meadows Pike, Prospect 40059.
Or a traffic engineer.
I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Kentucky, specializing in traffic engineering, yes.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Zimmerman, in your capacity as a, and I'm going to say traffic engineer, I realize that it's a professional engineer, but a traffic engineer, very often you're called upon to perform traffic studies as it relates to projects throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky, correct?
That is correct.
And do you agree that when you do one of these studies, that the design engineers take the information that you provide and utilize that in making the design for roadway improvements?
That is an accurate statement.
Okay. Now, when you don't do road design,
Correct.
but when you are doing the work that you do, you go out and you have somebody physically count cars in a particular location, and you gather that information and use that information to try to forecast what the future traffic will be. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
And those forecasts are based upon your training and experience, but those are your personal estimates as to which way cars are going to turn left or right out of a particular intersection.
Correct.
So in this particular situation, you performed a traffic study for the 2019 application for Sanctuary Falls Section 1, correct?
Correct.
And before you submitted the final study that was dated December of 2019, you had a prior study that you submitted that I believe was in November or October, in October of 2019, correct?
Correct.
And you have that in front of you?
I have 5 studies in my hand. So
Okay.
yes.
So if we look at the traffic study that you did, dated October the 28th of 2019, it says prepared for Louisville Metro Planning Commission and Oldham County Planning Commission.
Correct.
And on page 13 of that report, you submitted a chart that shows the entitlements that Norton Commons had and current completion as of October the 1st of 2019, correct?
Yes.
And in this chart, you listed the full build entitlements of 2,880 dwelling units, correct?
Yes.
560 square feet of retail, commercial plus civic uses, correct?
Correct.
You listed what you understood to be the current completion, correct?
Correct.
And then you had the remain to complete of 1,448 dwelling units and 21,019 square feet of retail and commercial.
Yes.
And after that, do you recall having contact and communication with David Toms of Norton Commons concerning these numbers being low?
Correct. Yes.
Now, I want to point out one other thing here. On the bottom of this, you list
a trip generation that you came up with. You used a chart there a couple charts at the bottom that show the land use, shopping center, multifamily, single family, right?
Yes.
And you have a paragraph in there that talks about what you estimated to be for a build out year of 2024. 50% of the remaining housing units and retail would still need to be built.
Yes.
And at that time, you estimated that 10% of the external trips would exit onto Schuler Lane and 10% would go south on towards Highway 22 off of 1694, right?
I don't believe you said that correctly, but that not to exit onto Schuler Lane, but that would exit to 1694 and would go north toward Schuler Lane.
All right. So your opinion at this time was that 20% of the total Norton Commons traffic would exit the 7 exits on.
No, that was not my opinion at that point.
What's your opinion at that point?
50% of this remaining traffic that is shown in that table, 20% would exit to 1694.
Okay. So 20% of the traffic generated by 50% of the remaining build out is going to go out to 1694 and 80% is going to go to Chamberlain Lane.
Correct.
Okay. You then updated that report after you got some information from Mr. Toms about what should have been the full build out, right?
Yes.
And in that report, you tendered a report to the Planning Commission dated December the 12th of 2019.
Correct.
All right. And in that report, you again listed Norton Commons summary of entitlements and current completion as of October the 1st of 2019, correct?
Yes.
And in there, what I've highlighted, you actually used the numbers provided to you by Mr. Toms that shows 131,832 square feet of retail, correct?
Yes.
Which is 110,000 square feet more than you put in the prior report.
Yes.
And you listed 167,465 feet or 56 feet of office and service, correct?
Correct.
And in this report, you then changed the numbers here in the next paragraph, and you said that the external trips, 5% of the external trips that would be generated based upon this, I assume, is full build of 2029, right?
Yes.
So 5% of the trips from all of this new building that's going to be done would exit north on 1694 towards Schuler.
Yes.
And now instead of 10% going south towards towards KY 22, you have 60%.
Correct.
What's the change that came about that we've gone from roughly 20% of the traffic of all this new traffic going on to 1694 to 65% of the traffic?
I went back to the original as noted on this page that they can't see.
Okay.
I mean, they may want to follow along here, that the original a study that was prepared by Norton Commons dated September, I think that's a 15, but might be 25, 2006. What was remaining, the areas that were remaining and using the original trip distribution from that 2006 study, I changed my opinion on which traffic would come out which ways for Norton Commons.
Okay, so you reviewed a study that was performed for Norton Commons in September of 2006, and based upon your review of that report, you modified your report to now change which way these trips are going to go and how much of the traffic is going to exit out onto 1694.
Correct.
All right. So then after that, you did another traffic study for the application, right?
Correct.
And with regard to that, that's your initial report was January the 27th of 2022, and you revised that on April the 5th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And you filed that in the record. And again, we have the same chart that you used
Yes,
before, right?
the wrong one.
The wrong one. So now you've taken these numbers that were in the original October 2019 report that Mr. Toms gave you the correct figures,
Yes,
and you have gone back to the original incorrect numbers,
yes,
and you've done calculations about how much traffic is going to be generated by incorrect amount of Norton Commons at full build, correct?
Yep.
And you have now indicated that out of that, based upon using the wrong numbers, that we're again back to 10% of the external trips generated by the wrong numbers will go north towards Schuler and 10% will go south towards Highway 22.
yes,
Okay, so we acknowledge that these numbers are faulty.
yes,
And there's not anything that has been filed in the record, to my knowledge, that corrects these numbers.
nope,
So when the design of the highway, 1694, and the improvements at Schuler Lane was being made, they were relying upon information that you had provided about the amount of traffic that will be on 1694 that is incorrect.
that is a true sentence.
Now, then you submitted a couple supplemental memos to Mr. Zimmerman, or the county's traffic engineer, about a couple of intersections involved, right?
Yes,
And one of those has to do with St. Bernadette.
yes,
And you indicate that based upon your review of information, you believe that the AM St. Bernadette no build in 2027 will be a 37.5-second wait to get out of there. I assume is that turning left or turning right?
it's a single lane approach, so they both are included in the calculation.
Okay, and then once with the build, that intersection is going to go to an F.
Correct,
And your recommendation is that there be a turn lane put in at St. Bernadette to allow for traffic to turn to the right and traffic to turn to the left, correct?
correct.
That's on somebody else's property.
It is public right of way.
And to your knowledge, has there been any proposal by the developer to make any roadway improvements at St. Bernadette?
Yes,
Okay, I have another study, and I don't have any idea where this one came from. This was one that says was prepared for Metro Planning, and it printed funny. It says High Grove Subdivision Traffic Assessment, but it clearly has to do with this Schuler Lane, right?
yeah, I mean, it appears
Do
to,
you
yes.
have this study?
I mean, I might. I don't know if I have that one with me.
All I can see on the report is that it says that was done in 2019 up there at the top, but it printed funny when I got it, so I don't know exactly which one it is.
Like, wait, what are we comparing? What's on the inside? What do we got on the inside? Introduction, addendum, the North. Dated November 8th, this preliminary plan. Yes, I have that study.
Okay,
Right
and
here.
what is the date on that study?
November 25th, 2019.
That again, please, for the record, it was a little bit quiet.
Well, I was trying to read in the introduction paragraph to make sure that the one I was holding matches the one that he has. And I will confirm that the study dated November 25th, 2019 is the study, appears on a 30-second glance to be the study that Mr. Baxter has.
Okay, mine printed rather odd, so if we're looking at a November 25th study, again, you've got the correct entitlements after you communicated with Mr. Toms about what Norton Commons is entitled to at full build out, right?
Correct.
And then there's another paragraph in there where, well, first of all, are you using the full build numbers at 2029 or 2024 in this report? Do you know?
This study is, Says it's the 2029, but then the figure 2 says 2024.
Okay, and in that report, in the paragraph just above the table, says for external trips, 5% will go north towards Schuler Lane and 38% will go south towards Kentucky 22 using the existing 7 points of access along 1694.
Yes,
So we go from 10% are going to exit and go north towards or south towards 22. We've got 38%, 60%, and now we're back in the most recent report to 10%, right?
yes. This November 2019 is only the, what was estimated to be completed by 2024, not 2029.
Okay, and you, of course, in preparing these, you look at the regulations that are in effect for Oldham County as what is supposed to be contained in a traffic impact study.
Yes,
And included in that is supposed to be, under the regulations, any other subdivisions in the area that have already been approved by the Planning Commission at full build, right?
at the year that the study is being done.
Okay, so Norton Commons, you flip-flop back and forth between 2024 and 2029, correct?
Yes,
2024 was full build for Sanctuary Phase 1, correct?
correct.
And now you've been advised that they believe full build for Section 2 will be 2027.
Correct.
And Norton Commons, you've got numbers for 2029, but in the report that is before the commission today, we acknowledge that you're using incorrect numbers for Norton Commons at full build because you're using the ones you had in your original report. So all of the conclusions that are made based upon those full build entitlements are going to be incorrect in this report, correct?
It would be technically incorrect.
And again, if your report and your information was relied upon as it relates to the design of the roadway, 1694 at Schuler Lane, and the numbers that the engineer who designed the intersection was using were wrong, then that's going to be a problem, correct?
That is a potential problem.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. That's all the questions I have. I have a couple other points I'd like to make. My client appeared in front of the Planning Commission when they did their initial Oldham County phase. After they went through the Planning Commission, a lawsuit was filed against them by two individuals, Robert McAuliffe and Meadow Lake Farms, acting by and through Carl T. Fisher, Jr., the president of Meadow Lake Farms. And Mr. Fisher signed the lawsuit swearing that the allegations contained therein are true and correct. And in that lawsuit, Mr. Fisher, who is the owner of the property that is being subject to the application here, he signed this complaint swearing it's correct. And in that, he alleges no consideration was given to the effects of access through the narrow subdivision streets of Norton Commons onto Highway 1694, an unsafe, narrow, two-lane winding road which is overburdened by its current traffic load, as pointed out by TRC member Colonel Greg Smith of the Oldham County Police. However, his input was not heeded. That's a matter of public record. It was filed in 17 CI 480 in the Oldham Circuit Court, and that's a sworn statement by Mr. Fisher.
If I could,
Hold on. He's still got a few minutes on his
just wanted to put an objection on the record to testimony and filing this lawsuit of record. We were not notified about this. We have not reviewed this, or I've certainly not seen it before. The people that were the signatories of this complaint are not here to be cross-examined. So I think it should be stricken and none of this question should be permitted to go forward.
Mr. Carter, could you address that, please?
I got it. What's your response to that?
Well, Mr. Fisher is the owner of the property that is the subject matter of this application. He has submitted a sworn statement into a public forum indicating his concerns about Highway 1694, and that's relevant to this application.
Inconsistent statement.
I would just point out, I have no earthly idea if this was ever amended. I don't know if there's any depositions taken to explain it. I don't know anything about this. I wasn't an attorney on this file. Obviously, Mr. Baxter knows it backwards and forwards. But really, it just, here we are for our third time for a hearing. We've got our expert being asked about reports that were done 2 years ago that were provided to Mr. Baxter personally. We have provided all of our reports. I provided them to him personally well before any of these hearings. And here we are in May being dropped all these things, their expert report, this supposedly sworn statement that I don't know if this is a true document or not. I take his word for it, but I don't know. I've had no opportunity to review any of it. And I think it's an improper thing for us to have testimony being given by Mr. Baxter himself on those points, not to mention cross-examining our clients.
Mr. Carter, what's your expert opinion on this as our counsel?
Have it submitted and you can consider it for what it's worth.
So your opinion is that we move forward at this point
That's
with the
correct.
documents that have been presented.
That's correct.
I just make one final point in terms of it being a prior inconsistent statement. Is Mr. Fisher here? Yeah, they have an obligation to call Mr. Fisher as a witness. They could use this to cross-examine him for a prior inconsistent statement, but it's totally inappropriate for them to use this as his testimony, as if he is sitting here in this room when he's not. And they had more than ample opportunity to call him. They could have asked me to bring him as a witness today. They did not do that.
Just for the purposes, Mr. Chairman, he's an applicant, so he's a party. And his statements about that road are relevant. He's a party to this proceeding. Mr. Carter?
Consider it for what it's worth.
We will move forward.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I also, you all have done us the favor of putting the hearings as it relates to TRC, the Planning Commission, Fiscal Court, they're on YouTube. And YouTube has a feature on it where you transcribe what a particular speaker has to say. I went back to our hearing in December of 2019 when Mr. Pusateri testified, and there was some discussion at that time about these traffic lights, and maybe there's some confusion about it, but Mr. Pusateri is seen on YouTube, and to the right is a transcript of what he is saying. On the second page of this document, transcript continues, and it indicates that if there's any further future development, they were going to put a traffic light in at Schuler Lane and 1694. That was what was said in the hearing in December of 2019.
Interrupt you just a second here, and let me ask our counsel, is that transcript a legal document? I mean, it's not been transcribed by a court reporter or whatever. I mean, could there be errors in that, on that, what's being recorded or been transcribed? I'm a little uncomfortable with using that as a document to make a decision if it's not been recorded, say, by a court reporter.
Can you play it?
I'm not that technologically savvy, so.
I mean, that's my concern as chairman is that, it's been transcribed probably by a logarithm or something and not, and I don't know whether a person actually, transcribed it or how that's done. And sometimes there are errors in that.
That's fine. I'll move on. Tom, you can turn me back on.
I don't call balls and strikes. He's withdrawing it from consideration.
Okay. All right.
again on YouTube, this, and I've got better pictures of this because I have the what was presented, but there was at the Technical Review Committee on July 21st of 2021, that also is on YouTube. And this is the design drawing of the intersection at Schuler Lane that was presented at that time. So that shows that there is a left turn lane from 1694 on to Schuler, and it shows two lanes, one going south or whatever direction you want to call it, and one going north off of Schuler Lane on the proposed drawing. This is the exhibit that Mr. Talbot introduced at the technical review about traffic flow and traffic improvement. And here is a copy of what was actually presented and indicating that there would be a right turn lane at Schuler Lane, entrance to 1694. And it says not applicable phase 1, committed as part of phase 2. So from the perspective of the folks in Norton Commons who went out and built roads from I-71 south to just past St. Bernadette at 12-foot wide, 4-foot shoulders, 14-foot turn lanes, that were required to have 90-degree intersections on all of the roads coming out of their development that access onto 1694. And then we get to Schuler Lane, and Schuler Lane is going to be 50 degrees. The committed right-hand turn lane is not there. We go from 12-foot lanes to 10-foot lanes. We go from a 14-foot turn lane to a 12-foot lane. Basically, all the commitments about addressing the problems with Schuler Lane have not been addressed. And that was a commitment that was made to this body and to the fiscal court when we appeared on phase 1. So we look at it, and then you throw into the fact that you're going to generate, based upon the report of Ms. Zimmerman, as it relates to traffic generated by this subdivision, you're going to generate more cars per day on Schuler Lane than currently exists on 1694. It's going to be about 3,400 cars generated by this development, and there is about 3,200 ADT on 1694 at present, according to the testimony of Mr. Agent and according to Ms. Zimmerman's report. So you've got this intersection there that's going to have a huge amount of traffic flow, and that is going to be not addressed. And above and beyond that, you heard Mr. Agent say that we've got an issue with school buses. If you look at the inaccurate report of Ms. Zimmerman as it relates to how many cars are going to be coming in and out of that intersection, she estimates that there are going to be 10 new trips generated by this phase of this development going towards North Oldham County, going towards the schools over there. 10 new trips in the AM peak. Now, according to the form that was filed by the school board as it relates to their prior way they calculate the number of students, there are 89 students that purported to be generated by this development. They've lowered that number, and in fairness, the current number is 0.167 students per household, and I did the math, that's about 40 students, not 89. So in fairness, if they were allowed to proceed under the new calculation, it would be a much lower number. But that's still a lot of students that are going to be generated by these households attending the Oldham County schools, all going to the North Campus. And yet it's only going to yield 10 trips during the peak AM hour, according to the flawed traffic study. So you all have in front of you the regulations that apply to subdivisions. You also have Louisville Metro's regulations, which apply to how roads are designed. Mr. Agent has talked about KYTC's design standards, all of which don't seem to be met, yet KYTC decided to approve this intersection. And we have got, that's based upon flawed information that was presented that underlies and underpins all of these design decisions. So from that perspective, this is not an appropriate request to rezone and to subdivide this property based upon that faulty information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. All right, at this point, Commission. Anyone else? Anyone else here that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move into questions from the commissioners to those opposing the application and the applicant. So I've got a couple of questions that I would like to ask that I made notes on back earlier. What is the bonding amount for the traffic light and the time frame to install that you all talked about?
I think it was 10 years. I apologize. I thought you were directing a question to somebody else.
Yeah, directed to you. Is that the bonding amount for the traffic light and the time frame?
$125,000 for each light at 8 intersections, so a total of $250,000. I believe it was 10 years from the time that they were put in, so they would probably have about 8 years.
And that
Is that not right?
let's just come up to the microphone, please, Mr. Priester.
It was 10 years from the time that we recorded the record plat, which was in December. So at this point, it's up to the Kentucky Highway Department that depend on, to decide when they're going to put the traffic light in. I've been told the most effective way to get the traffic light in would be for the residents of Glen Oaks to call, petition, write letters, and ask that be done, since they're the ones experiencing delays, and we know that the money is sitting there for it to be done.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Solomon, let me ask you too, just on that, I know it's 10 years or whatever, that bonded amount of $250,000, would inflation, cost be figured into that, or how does that, okay, sorry. All right. County engineer. So, all right, Mr. Priester.
We put up a bond for $125,000, which was the amount that we were told it would probably cost. But we said we would spend up to $150 if you look in the minutes.
Okay. All right. And one other question, you talked about dark sky lighting and there's with conditions. What are those conditions?
There were lights at the front, at the doors were not dark sky.
Okay.
And to the extent that the LG&E didn't do it, that they had dark sky friendly, but not dark sky, then we could not do it.
All right. Thank you. Commissioners, now open it up for questions for either the applicant or the opposition.
If I could ask permission, Mr. Baxter's raised a lot of questions in terms of some of the facts that were provided in our traffic reports. One of the first things that we did when I started speaking today is that we have been all about transparency, fair dealing in terms of providing adequate time. We have always provided our reports well in advance of any hearing for anybody to review. Today, we've been given reports that we have never seen before. We've not been given much of an opportunity other than a few minutes to look at them. We've not had any opportunity to have them analyzed, to double check what's in them. I would like to ask for a continuance on this hearing, so we have an opportunity to go through those reports and the new information that's been provided today. Also to have an opportunity for Ms. Zimmerman to go through her reports. And just to give you all an idea, the report that was done in October of 2019, I think this was said, but let me make sure it was clear. That was not done because we were not required to do any traffic study as a result of our subdivision plan. It was only 58 lots. It did not trigger any regulatory requirement to provide that plan. We were asked by Norton Commons if we would do a traffic study well beyond what any normal traffic study would be required, and certainly well beyond what was required in the phase one. We voluntarily did that. That report's been there for at least 2 years. This is the first time, even after the phase one hearing, that we've heard any issues raised about any of that. I think they're legitimate issues. I'm not trying to undermine that. I would just think that it's in fair dealing and due process. we should be given an adequate opportunity to look at those items, have them analyzed by experts. In addition, the continuance would give me an opportunity to cross-examine their expert and also bring Diane Zimmerman back on direct testimony, which I would like to reserve our time to do. And I believe, Chairman, we had about 20 minutes left in our original time when we went forward as well. So we would ask for that courtesy. I think it will give you a more adequate and a full picture of everything that is in this case and the issues that are here. The fact is, Kentucky Department of Transportation and Jefferson County have both approved this. Would these changes, would these issues with the traffic generation make any difference? I don't know. I think that's a fair question, but we'd like a time for a continuous to fix those things. Those reports were very long. Each one, I think, was at a minimum about 30 pages. They're highly detailed. It's certainly easy for confusion to occur. Nothing was done intentional, and nothing on examination. Ms. Zimmerman had brought that out as being intentional. So if anything needs to be done, we just would like to take a look at those and correct those numbers if that's the case.
What is your proposed timeline? Sorry.
That's a really good question. Not having spoken to Diane and know how long it would take to check these things, I don't know. I do know my client is going to want to move forward as fast as possible. We've had a lot of delays, but I think in full due process and your all's consideration, it's important to get those figures. I would ask to be put on, I suppose, next month with the caveat that depending on what the figures show, whether we're able to get in touch with KYTC and get any decision made on the corrected numbers, whether that would make any difference, and we might be coming back and asking for another delay. But I would like to keep it moving forward. Does that sound appropriate, Joe?
Okay.
Consider this request. June 20.
I need to come to the microphone, please.
6 is your next hearing date, and I'm in a trial that Judge Crosby graciously continued for me that was supposed to be this week, that I moved so that I could be here today. And so there's no way that I can ask him again to move a criminal trial for me for somebody that there's just not a way I'm going to be able to get that case moved. So it's going to have to go to the next step.
Suggest we're going to take about a 5-minute recess here. I want to confer with our counsel, Jim Urban and Greg King as vice chair, and I'll come back with a decision shortly.
And done trial work. I think that if he's got a trial, I think that's a perfectly reasonable request. What I would suggest is perhaps if we could, after, maybe not set a date here today, but speak with staff and advertise. Barry and I could talk about, look at our calendars, and maybe we even set a special date for a hearing that's convenient to everybody's schedule.
We'll take about a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back with a decision. go ahead. Let's call the planning commission back to order after discussion with our council and, sorry? I'm sorry. It says it's red, so I assume it's on. After consultation with our council, our staff, and vice chair, we are going to allow the commissioners to continue to ask questions on anything but traffic. And so once we get past that point, then we will, the chair will allow a continuance to a date to be determined by both councils, working when that would work with them. And then we would start the hearing back with just the issue of traffic being discussed. We won't add any additional, new information or new date, issues other than the traffic that has been talked about this morning. Are both councils in agreement with that? Both of you to come back up.
That just provided I'll still have opportunity to cross-examine their expert and bring my witnesses back on direct testimony.
Relates to traffic.
Yes. Traffic and the road construction matters that we're defining traffic broadly. And I assume we'll do our closing arguments effectively and rebuttals at that time. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baxter? Okay. All right, commissioners, I will open it back up now for questions. It's been presented here to this point, issues other than traffic. Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Finney. Make sure your mics are on, please, if you would.
Trying to get thoughts together. I have a question for the developer on regards to the walkway.
The 8-foot,
Yes.
the 8-foot path, yes, sir.
What the pathway? What is that construction? What will it be? Is that a grassway? Is it concrete? Is it
asphalt or concrete? It's an asphalt 8-foot. Yeah, it's an 8-foot wide path, so it's supposed to be. I think it's really intended to be more than just walking, jogging. I don't know if bikes are supposed to be on it, but certainly they're, I think they do. If you're on roller skates, it's a place to go. And it would effectively have the enhanced landscaping that we had on phase 1. Similar design as that, with the 50-foot buffer in addition to the four-board horse fence.
Does that continue on into the phase 1 or does it end there?
It's been done on phase 1, and with phase 2, it would be continued all the way down to a 1694.
Okay, and so it's an asphalt.
To St. Mary's. To correction, it would be continued down to St. Mary's, so not quite to 1694.
So, and it is an asphalt base.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is, and I think some of it's already in existence. So, you could drive by and see what's currently there.
Phase 1 is done. So that 8-foot paved path already exists, and then we'll do it for the further in front of the balance of the property that we would own.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions other than traffic? Mr. Hampton?
Just to be sure I don't get passed over on something, when you say traffic, you're including anything that has to do with the roads or intersection or anything else, not just traffic.
Correct. That would be correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any additional questions? Any additional questions this morning? Okay. Seeing none, we will, I guess, close this hearing at this point, and then it will be continued at a date to be determined with consultation of our staff and both councils. And we'll set that. It won't be a special meeting. It'll be a regular fourth Tuesday meeting, and we'll get you back on a schedule. But that's going to be up to you all to come to a date that you both can agree with and both can be here.
Hopefully, Barry can get another trial scheduled for him. But
okay. All right. Is there, Mr. Baxter, anything that you need to add before we close here? Okay. All right. With that, I guess make it legal. We need a motion to continue. Okay. Chair, the chair would ask for a motion, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to continue as noted.
Okay. Have a second motion and second. All right. And this is on both dockets, docket PZ 22014, which was a zoning map amendment request on 109.4 acres. And then the second docket is docket PZ 22015, which is the preliminary subdivision plan for 187 lots on 109.4 acres. So this will be continued, as I stated, to a future date, or a regularly scheduled planning commission to be determined by both councils, consultation with each other. So with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the hearings will be continued. Now, commissioners, we've got what we're going to do. We're getting lunch brought in today. We have two other docketed items that'll be right after lunch. And so we're going to have, I think, pizza brought in next door over here. So we don't.
It will be. It's about 15 more minutes. I plan on 11:45. Right. And then we've told the next applicants that they'll be on at 1 o'clock.
So we will stand adjourned until 1 o'clock.